Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Okay, here we are, everybody. I cannot believe that this is the first episode that we've done, or the first interview.
Bizarre.
Although on This Is Where the Magic Happened, you were a guest. I'm speaking with Sarah Goff.
Hi.
In person.
In person. So excited.
And if you listen to this program at all, you recognize that name because I always talk about my shamanic Reiki healer. And I've actually got this. It'll be in my special that comes out, but this great bit, and you're part of my bit.
Oh, I've
Because,
just been waiting to be part of one of your
Back
bits.
when, back when I had a crow problem, I asked you for advice, and you told me I needed to make an offering to the crows to restore the balance in my relationship, and then so that's part of the joke.
Oh,
But
gosh,
about
I've
how I
just
go
been
back to the
waiting.
mountain with a bunch of hot dogs and
Nice.
things like that. Anyway,
Hot dogs.
well,
Really?
they were symbolically representing squirrels
Oh.
because I had stopped a bunch of crows from killing a baby squirrel that they were going to eat, I suppose.
I'm sure.
And so I freed this baby squirrel, and then ever since that moment where I ran and screamed at him and stuff, that the crows, when I'd go hiking, they were following, like I'd always have at least one crow following me and like heckling me as I hiked.
Mm-hmm.
And everywhere I went, I started becoming paranoid, like, these crows hate me, man. These crows are everywhere, And so then I told you, I was like, I got a crow problem.
Yeah. You threw a wrench in the system,
Yeah,
man.
I sure did. I was like, the circle of life is mine to control.
Yes. Yeah.
So
That causes problems every
well,
time.
you are in the beautiful city of Los Angeles for a short time to see some clients and things like that. And for anyone who's not familiar with it, you can go to soulrollinglove.com and you can see everything about Sarah. I don't know how to explain to people. I think Angela would always explain it best. She's like, imagine going to like 5 years of therapy at once. But not in an overwhelmingly, oh my God, no way, that sounds like a nightmare kind of thing. But
Thank goodness.
I mean, one of the only times I've ever had like a convulsive, like, like crying, and it wasn't even me talking. I was just laying there while you were doing your work, and something came, something worked its way up,
Yeah.
and it, and released from me, which was
Important.
very important. So, I mean, I can't recommend enough.
Thanks. I'm
having these.
so grateful to get to do this work. I tell you what, I still wake up and go, wow, I get to do this with people. Cool.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
And it's really funny because we were talking off mic about how like certain groups in certain parts of the country or certain parts of the world, how they look at anything that's outside of the quote unquote organized religion aspect of how people practice and heal, and once you start entering this world of quote unquote alternative medicine, which might as well just be called original medicine.
Please.
You start to realize like, there's no reason for this needs to be pushed above the surface.
I feel that neuroscience is really connected a lot of dots for people and finally bringing things into acceptance that were thought to be quote unquote woo. And if you remember talking to me in the beginning, every time anyone would ever say woo, I would just dig into them. There's something about the word woo that tells me that what we're doing is not real. It's make-believe, or we're making it up. And electricity is real, and you can't see that either. So why would working with the energy of our bodies be weird? And I just always thought it was disregarding. So I'm grateful I don't hear that word so much anymore.
Yeah, I had a T-shirt I made for a short time called "Embrace the Woo."
Good.
Kind of like own the word.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the woo world, baby.
Yeah.
I just want to see that reality show. A bunch of people are like in rooms and they never see each other or talk but they just communicate psychically with one another. And
Oh, we're
see the
doing it
drama that
all the
unfolds.
time. Have you ever turned around and looked at somebody and they're looking straight at you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called energy. We feel it.
Yeah.
It's real. Yeah, it's fascinating to do exercises in my classes where I'll have someone stand backward to the audience and say, okay, think that they're not welcome here. Just think it when I put my thumb down. And when I put my thumb up, I want you to welcome them here and just feel that they're accepted here. And it was wild. The person who stands there can always figure out, because they don't hear me, because I'm doing this. The person can't see me putting my thumb up and down. And it's wild that they always feel it dramatically and can always go, oh, I'm getting this right now. And intrusions is what we call that in shamanic language. And it's very, very real. This is why it's so important not to think negatively of people. That is black magic. But you say black magic to someone and they think, oh, voodoo. And it's like, okay, do we have to go to the extreme? How about like the fact that when we're driving down the road and we curse at someone because they cut us off, we literally just curse them. And that is black magic. It doesn't have to be this sit-down ceremonial voodoo doll thing, even though it is that too. But there is, it's simple, and people forget how powerful they are just with thought and emoting.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just give in to the urge to do that.
So easy.
Which I struggle with trying to understand if we're built that way, where it's just easier to do that, or if we've been programmed in that way to where we believe it's easier to give into that.
It's a great question.
But one of the interesting things, I wanted to talk about this real quick, is my first session, you said something along the lines of you told me that I was connecting, right?
Mm-hmm. This was a long time ago, right?
Yes,
so.
Disparate things, right? Well, I never forgot it.
Okay, good.
But you told me I was like, I think essentially you said that I was building a bridge between.
I do remember that, actually.
And it's funny because this paranormal documentary series I'm making, it just so happened to be organically, when something really crazy happened, we had this like flashlight turn on command by just asking a question out to whatever energy or spirit was in the room. Mm-hmm. And then later we're talking about it and how it was a twist flashlight. And so when it's twist off, there's no connection between the battery and the coil or whatever lights it up. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, the spirit or the entity, somehow they make that connection. I was like, oh, so they built a bridge. And then I was like, oh, I got the titular phrase of the documentary series. And so it all came full circle because the whole idea of the documentary series is to try to make the high strange familiar, to try to build a bridge and show how consciousness is that bridge that connects all of these different things, right?
Good
Us
work.
and everything. So I thought that was like really like, oh, wow, this really all just came full circle for me.
It sure did. Good work, Ryan.
So
very courageous of you.
Well, it's funny because, you saw all of this happening.
Weird. I still get surprised every day after sessions. I say to Sam every night, like, I still can't believe this shit happens every day.
It's amazing, right? And I think that's what
fun.
Some people might not understand.
Yeah.
That when you're living inside of it, you're still surprised by it. And it's still fresh, it's still new, it's still astounding oftentimes, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. It's not like we live in these worlds where we accept that so much more is possible than what we think, mm-hmm. right? And we know that, mm-hmm. and we've experienced it, but we're not cold about it. Like, well, this is the fucking world, man.
Right.
What are you talking about? No, yeah. Everywhere I look, there's like, it's not like it becomes this, like you're shut off to the rest of the world kind of situation, at least those viewpoints. And
yeah. Well, I think too, it's how are you nurturing yourself, right? What are your practices? What are your truths? And, there's times in my life I feel like I'm always studying. I'm always in study. And one of the things I study is shamanism, and one of the practices of being able to do this kind of work and hold space for people in this way is playfulness and being in beginner's mind. From a Buddhist perspective, you would call it beginner's mind. And it's easy to get out of that, and whenever I do get out of it, I know I'm going into my ego and I'm thinking that I have something to do with it. And then it's not surprising anymore. And then I feel heavier after sessions, or like I did something wrong. And we start to forget that I'm just a channel. I'm not here to be a guru or anybody's, altar. I'm here to just hold space and help people remember who they are. That's it. And I don't remember a lot after sessions, because it's not Sarah, and that's good. And because I can't imagine trying to be accountable for everything that came out of my mouth in a session.
There's no way. I mean, I can't remember what I talked about on a podcast a week earlier.
Right.
For an hour.
Yeah.
Let alone, there's just no way.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually, that would be. I think it would be a curse to be able to remember everything like that. It would be unbearable.
Well, and that's, I just don't take myself too seriously. And I think that's really important. I think all of us, whenever we're working really hard, if we start taking ourselves too seriously, our work becomes miserable. And it's really supposed to be play. When the play gets sucked out of it, the life gets sucked out of it.
Yeah. And you talk about beginner's mind, and it reminds me of beginner's luck at a casino or playing a game. Right?
Totally.
And beginner's luck is a very real phenomena that when you first play a game, your luck is off the charts.
Mm-hmm. Well, mine wasn't off the charts. I did win $70 the first time I ever sat down at a blackjack table, and I just went, okay, thanks, bye. And I literally picked up, walked away, and that was 10 years ago. I've never played it since.
You nailed it. I wish I could say the same thing.
I think a lot of people wish they could.
So I do love the idea of beginner's mind.
Yeah, the other way we put it is no mind. Because as soon as, and it doesn't mean that I'm losing discernment, but if we remember, there's a difference between judgment and discernment. Judgment is things are black and white. This is the way it is. It's right or wrong. This is how it is. Discernment is I've had experience that's showed me right and wrong in those situations, but you're doing it like this now. Tell me why. It's the curiosity. It's the wanting to see things from a different perspective, being open to different ways. So still holding on to my discernment, that's how you are able to sink into a hearing spirit, or, I mean, sometimes I smell things. All the different clairs come in at different times with different people. Every session is so different. Someone came in who lost their father, and I wasn't aware of that, but all I could smell was cigarette smoke before our session. And they came in, I said, do you smoke? They're like, no. I was like, well, there is a stench of cigarette smoke before you got here. And they said, that's my dad. He just died. It's like, okay, well, so there's different ways. But if I didn't use my discernment and go, oh, I'm just crazy. Right? And if I just judged. You didn't know? If I just judged myself.
Crazy.
Pay me. It's like, no.
You don't know what I'll do.
I mean, it's, if I was just being judgmental of myself, I wouldn't have shared that. Then that person wouldn't have felt that connection to the other side. So you want to use your discernment. I'm not just going to tell people everything that comes in, because I'm also vetting spirit at the same time. Sometimes there's someone cloaked as something else, and it's actually my job to help remove them from the space. So a lot's going on in a session, and it's also why I'll take breaks and rattle for a little while and not say anything, and because I'm getting the lay of the land, or I'm just really quiet for a moment. And everyone that's worked with me now for the past, 4.5 years, I've had my business now. And everybody's pretty used to it now. But in the beginning, I definitely felt a little nutty. I left my HR job to go be a shamanic practitioner. That looked weird.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
Yeah, well, it speaks to, what you speak of a lot is like, take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
Trust in the universe throwing its energy. If you're making the choice for the right reasons.
Right. And if the synchronicity is there, we don't want to be looking at our karma necessarily. That's cause and effect. But we want to be in synchronicity. That's where spirit really communicates. When things flow, when things are in flow. But if I'm trying to escape my reality because I can't cope with my reality, that's a very different way and not necessarily a healthy line. That's a fate line. You don't want to be on that.
Yeah, you often will hear the phrase like, new place, same problem, right? It's like you can't move away from your problems.
No.
And so like oftentimes people will like, I need to move to a different city. And I did this when I was younger. I'm like, I'm moving here, I'm moving there, everything's going to be better. And then it's like, maybe for the first couple of weeks, it's like, oh yeah, brand new. And then it's like, oh, same old stuff.
Yep.
I'm not dealing with, these issues I have that are making me sad or whatever else. So it is in flow states interesting because that's like, it's been for the last 5 years, 7 years or so. You hear, not the cool kids, but like they talk about like getting into for creatives, like getting into a flow state, like, but there was even a point where they're like, playing video games, that's getting into a flow. I had this conversation with a friend, like, when you get into a game and you're just in the flow state, that's like really good for so you need to incorporate playing video games into your work schedule.
Interesting.
To get into and I was just like, are we making excuses to play video games right now?
Well,
but there is something to be said about that, right?
I want to tackle that because, so if we look at the brain as in having different areas of the brain, most people are living in fight or flight states. And that's the reptilian brain. That's our first brain. And that's feed, flight, fornicate. When I'm sweating, I'm in my reptilian brain. That's very physical. And then we go into the limbic brain, which is an emotional brain. And there we get caught in the emotions of things. And if I don't know how to navigate my emotions, I might get swept away and go back into fear, back into my reptilian brain. So a lot of times we dance between those areas of our brain. The neocortex is the newest part of our brain, only 50,000 years old now. And if you look at the Neanderthals and those slanted foreheads, right, they didn't have this neocortex that we now today have. And this higher mind, this is where we lighten up. This is where we go into flow states. So I have a theory about that, and that is if they're in fight or flight while they play video games, they are keeping that part of their brain busy while they go into the higher mind and play and lighten up.
Oh, interesting.
So that might be what's going on. They might be playing with their brains. However, if they don't address those shadow parts of themselves being fear, then eventually those fears just might hit overdrive, and then they can't get to the higher mind without that dopamine hit. And that's where people are addicted to suffering. Oh, tell me about your drama. Oh, God, you got fired today? Oh, yeah, hit me up, man. Oh, what, your girlfriend left you? Oh, God. Oh, have another drink.
Let me tell you what's wrong with Will Smith.
Yes!
Let me tell you what's wrong with Will Smith. And did Chris Rock deserve it? It's like we have...
Oh, man.
I got, like, and I have to... And I know this happens to me, but I get angry sometimes, and I'm just like, internet comedy culture is the worst. I'm like, I don't want to be any part of it. I don't want anything to do with it, because it's all about, like, in comedy, it's like frowned upon to punch down. You're supposed to punch up, right? But it is more than accepted to punch them while they're down, right? So, because if someone's up, but they're in a down state, everyone's like punch, 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 right? And so it's just carnivorous, it's insatiable, and there seems to be this, everybody's like, oh, okay, what can I make the quickest meme? Making fun of this person's personal distress to get the most likes.
And right there, that's a dopamine hit. That's or an energy exchange, if we wanted to put it in that verbiage. But there's actually science behind it, that we're getting a hit of dopamine, and then I feel high, but it's also fleeting. So then how do I get that again? And I have to either repeat the behavior, go play a video game, do something that's thrill-seeking, right? Yeah. And that's the danger, is when people get addicted to that dopamine, they are addicted. I just went through a Vipassana course. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but it's a Buddhist, teachers teaching you, and he says, our brain, it's addicted. We're all addicted. But every time he said it, here I go with my dopamine hit right now. I'm about to get one. It sounded like he was saying, we're all a dick. Because of his accent. Anyways, so now Sam and I have this joke of calling each other, you're a dick. That's all it is. You're just a dick to it. But it becomes an addiction, and then they think it's a good thing because they feel high for a minute. And that's okay. But for people that are energy vampires, right? It becomes their way of life. And then their whole way of life is making others feel really challenged, and they don't know how to get out of it. And that's where, coming into remembering that courage is not the absence of fear, it's the awareness of fear. But I am choosing to walk through it with a courageous heart, not from a vindictive place, but from a courageous place of, okay, that's there, but I don't have to live by the rules of fear. So your business is a really interesting, colorful, challenging one.
Yeah, well, it's not to say that I've never done what I'm talking about either.
No, it's for all of us.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the culture in general, like more than it does like the people creating the content, and because the culture consumes it. I mean,
of course,
just as carnivorous and insatiably as those who create it.
This is why we have these reality shows that are just drama.
Yeah, like this. Oh God, I don't even want to talk. I mean, I love it. Like, we're gonna get married and we've never seen each other, and everyone's like, I can't wait to see how this fucking falls apart, right? And then they have the recap issues where there was, I by default had seen some of one of that one just because my girlfriend was watching.
Oh, okay.
And there was one guy on the couch at the end after they all got back together saying, he's like, I'm the bad guy. You guys needed me. Like, that's my role on this show. I mean, are you not aware of that? And everybody's like, this is real, man. You're like messing with people's feelings. And he goes, this is a joke, right? Like, we're on a reality show. Right. I'm the bad guy. Everybody gets to hate me.
Wow.
And everybody's like, you don't understand that you've hurt people's feelings. And those people believed what they were saying. He believed what he was saying.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, this guy. And then they're like, maybe you're on the wrong show. And like you could see like Nick Lachey and his wife. She's famous. I can't remember her name. But they're like
people's names.
But they're like, yeah. Well, I know Nick Lachey. He's a Cincinnati kid. But and so they're like, maybe you were on the wrong show. We're here trying to find. This is an experiment, trying to find love for like what people really are, not what they look like.
Interesting.
Right. So I mean, he sells it pretty well, even though they know that's all bullshit. But it's just content. But so it was pretty easy that this guy who showed so much awareness and honesty about what was happening and what his role in it was, he was attacked for that, right? And he was also not a nice guy. You know what I mean? He was built to be the bad guy because he was mean. He didn't say things that were, kind, and very outdated views, specifically about like how to refer to women and things like that. So,
oh dear.
So he was made for the part. So maybe he was just using this as an excuse to be the piece of shit that he was, or behaving like, right? Anyway, it is interesting though, because we can lean into those roles. And if he likes that kind of attention, you know how much attention he got, right? So it is that dopamine hit of like, how do I keep this? How do I keep this going? And I think once people realize that, like, oh, the internet makes it possible for all of us to try to be famous, as opposed to doing it the old-fashioned way through these, there's only like 5 or 6 different roads to get famous. Now everybody's like, oh, I can be famous by doing anything if I get lucky enough or do it right.
Yeah.
And then everybody's just in their device now.
Oh, big time. Big time.
Although there's a lot of people who aren't.
Yeah, I can't do Facebook and Instagram anymore. Every now and then I'll go on Instagram to drop a picture. Like when I put the teepee up for the first time, I was like, this is beautiful. Check this out. But it's so intoxicating. It's like, I remember opening it up once and I was on it for an hour. I hung it up and I was like, how did I just blow an hour of my...
I hung it up, you said.
I did, didn't I?
I hung up the phone on Instagram.
I did. Well, I did.
Yeah, that's really funny.
And ever since then, I'm like, this is so false. This is a false reality. And I would really prefer to live in the real one.
But when in a world where people, or when you're offering something, and when you're offering a service and the world changes in the way they find services that they want,
yep.
There is the harsh reality of you're doing yourself a disservice by not at least having a presence there so people can find you.
Right. Yeah, and I heard that, of course, especially in the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
But everyone that finds me is word of mouth.
Well, that's a good point. I wish I could say the same thing about me. But yeah, so I guess they are very different in that way.
And honestly, I don't... Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've been on with you, but you and Angela, that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. I think I've done one other one since. And it was a client, who just wanted me to go off on Reiki for a while, and we talked Reiki. But it's heartbreaking to me how many people get addicted to it, and then they don't nurture themselves. They're literally taking from how they might build stability within themselves to be self-sourcing, and instead of looking outside themselves for something else to fix them, or something outside them has to fill that hole inside them, and that's where I guess if someone found me from Instagram, I'd be like, okay, so cancel your Instagram account. That'd be the first thing. Oh, good. You found me there. Okay. Well, let's take 2 weeks of not looking at Instagram and see how your life turns out. But it's also really brutal on children. All of this fake faces and bodies. I mean, the things women do to themselves on Instagram, it's really kind of when I quit. I just even thinking about it sort of makes me nauseous. It's so sad to me. I mean, I see 20-year-olds getting Botox. I'm like, what are you doing? You're beautiful. It's crushing.
Yeah, I think we could talk about the source of this, right? And like Instagram obviously is just another symptom.
Yeah.
But it's that looking without looking outside of ourselves for something. And that's like the toughest thing to just accept and
yes, it is.
Address, realize in the moment, and then counter.
Right. Well, exactly. That counter moment's really hard. But by then, you're probably in fight or flight, and your reptilian brain is locked down your neurons to the point where nothing's moving anymore in your brain, and you can't make any other choice. So it takes major discipline. And more than death, the ego is terrified of annihilation. It wants to be important. And if we look at our own importance and how much it leads us into these false identities, that can be terrifying to some people if that's the only place they've ever been trained to live. And that's the ego. It wants you to be terrified because it wants to be alive, very much alive.
That makes sense. The visual image I have is of a child that was born in a huge house and was only ever in the same room. And then at some point, the door kind of starts to crack open a little bit of the only place they've ever known, and they don't realize that there's a huge house out there. And what's on the other side of the door, it's like terrifying. And meanwhile, there's like signs on the wall that just say, "Don't leave here."
Right.
This is where you're safe.
Yes, totally. And it's okay to have our safe places within us. We do want to find harmony with our ego because we can never annihilate it in this realm. It's just what we're wearing.
Well, yeah, there's this interesting book called The Death of Time, or it's on there somewhere. Yeah, anyway, it's not important. It's a scientist, and he's talking about now, what does now even mean? And, trying to understand what the moment is scientifically and how it hasn't been achieved at this point by science. And towards the end of the book, he says, the only way to be immortal is to have ego death. And, he talks about, volunteering, acts of kindness, things like this all contribute to ego death. And he's like, if you can realize that and start doing that, you essentially can become immortal because, our ego, the birth of the ego helped bring about the birth of, oh my God, I die. And so if you don't have ego telling you, oh my God, I'm going to die in this physical form, you never die. So before the ego, we were immortal in a sense.
That's a beautiful way of seeing it. I can see it from the place of, for the shaman, they step outside of time. That's where you do your work, is outside of time. And time is able to be traveled and gone through and explored, and we can go to our future healed states and pull it back and go back and heal our young selves and bring them up to today. So traveling outside of time is a very important part of the work. And to get there, you really do have to release the ego. It is very rooted for me to compassion and remembering that. And it's a strange thing to try and teach people. Compassion is very hard. I've tried. It's very hard. But to be able to step out of, time is really no mind, and being comfortable in our own unimportance takes practice and discipline and focused effort. Like, you really do have to meditate and drop in. Because if you're not familiar with what it is to be part of the one, then all the ego is busy doing is trying to separate you. So it does take discipline. I remember one of my first teachers told me that shamanism was a discipline. And man, did I hate that, because everything in me is about sourcing freedom. And so I was like, wow, I really chose the wrong thing to study. Yeah. But, I had died, and I was searching for my path. And this kept coming right in front of my toes of, this is your path. This is your path. So I just kept listening and learning and practicing. And eventually I was able to see, wow, in that big house that I was born in, was getting the opportunity to go out into the rest of the house and see it and experience it. But I was perceiving so much of it as danger instead of opportunity. And that is a key right there to come out of that ego mind, is instead of seeing danger when it comes up in our life, is to look for the opportunity. That's a really, really important step. And then you can start getting into the higher mind and having a new perception of what's happening instead of staying in the suffering and the dopamine war.
The great dopamine war.
Yeah, because it's going on in everybody's minds, right? That's a chaotic place. Our minds are mad, and all the great sages of old, any lineage you study or read about, they all say the mind is mad. Even the Great Hatter. The Mad Hatter, right? The Great Mad Hatter.
The Great Hatter.
The Great Hatter.
Mad is he. It's and just for those listening, when you say you died, I mean, we're talking about a literal death here. Mm-hmm. So, and which was a major turning point for you.
Huge. I wouldn't be doing my work if that hadn't happened. And from a shamanic perspective, again, we do believe we have many deaths, and this doesn't mean that it has to be physical. It is thought to be an initiation into the work, which I was unaware of upon the time it happened. But yes, it was a very physical death, and I starved to death for 17 weeks from an overgrowth of bad bacteria in my gut called C. difficile, and it was excruciatingly painful. And I hope when they take me back next time that I don't have to go through the physical part so much. But at the same time, I will try and see the opportunity in it. And yeah, it was beautiful. It was a great, just an incredible experience. It's very hard to describe in words. But when I was on the other side and they showed me my life, and I was particles. I was literally in the air and very, very dense white light. And I got to come back and play some more. And that was the last thing they really, and when I say they, it was more a presence. There wasn't like my Uncle Sam standing in front of me. It was just this presence that I was getting knowings. It was very fast, but there was nothing arduous about all of the information coming in at the same time. I was able to be in multiple places simultaneously, which is why I understand why I can even do the work I do today. Spirit can be in multiple places at the same time, and I was, and it was not overwhelming. There was nothing overwhelming about it. But if my human ego tried to go there, it would be very overwhelming. And then when I was sent back, the last thing I was told was, you have to go back and remind everyone it's a playground. They're all taking it way too seriously. And I was one of those people. I was one of those people that was taking it all way too seriously. And wow, did life change? I mean, everything in my life dramatically changed. I was hearing the angel voices or positive, uplifting spirits, however you want to perceive or call them. I could hear them. I could see dead people. Everything was really hardcore for the first 6 months I was back, and I couldn't go to public places. And that's when I really started to study, and I had to go see someone to help me to, like, how do I live like this? And And that led me to shamanic work. And it's been a huge gift and blessing. And I think if any spiritual practice or religion has come into the masses, I really do believe that the roots of those intentions for it coming forward for people has always been to help relieve suffering, to help relieve the human condition of its suffering. And I feel really lucky that through all these different studies, of spiritual studies, for 25 years, really. I mean, I was raised Christian, but I've always been studying some sort of practice. And Buddhism, I sweat with the Lakota tribe here in California for years and years and years. None since COVID, but I'm glad I got one in just before COVID happened. But all these different practices are always to help relieve people from their suffering and lift them up and help them remember how they might be empowered in that. So finding a practice that lifts you up is really the key to finding balance with these mad minds of ours. Otherwise, I'm going to be a drug addict. I mean, that was where I was headed for sure. So
yeah, it's, Joseph, somewhere in the universe, Joseph Campbell's heart of consciousness is glowing as he hears this, essentially the hero's journey going to, and then coming back. And what do you do with the information once you come back?
Yeah.
Is remind people that it's a playground, and you get into the work you're doing now. It's really, I love this idea, as ridiculous as it may sound, is that there's this dead person's club, right? Like where it's like you die, you come back to life, and you're like, what the fuck? And then somehow you find someone else who died and came back and said, what the fuck? Like before you did. And you go, what's going on? You're like, okay, this is what I figured out so far. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Well, what happened to you? Well, when I did, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm seeing some themes here, right? And then they find a third person who died and came back like 10 years even before they did, and they're like, oh, you're not gonna fucking believe this part. And you're like, oh my God. Okay, now we're starting to realize here that there's a fabric to the lessons that we're all learning from this, and then. Not to say that's like the birth or the origin of shamanic work in general, but the fact that these ideas can be understood by all these different people who are experiencing something similar in different forms, and they all, for the most part, I've never heard someone come back from a near-death experience or being dead and coming back to life and being like, you know what I learned? It's every man for themselves, motherfucker. Like, we're supposed to get, take, right. Because after we're dead, the lights go out.
Yeah.
I've
Eat
never...
up pretty.
Yeah.
No.
I've never heard that.
Never heard that either. I've heard people not experiencing anything, but...
They don't come back and turn into psychopaths.
No, not at all. And funny you should mention the hero's journey. That's exactly... the name of the workshop that I'm teaching up in Boise.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm walking people through the medicine wheel, and it's from the Chiaro shamans of the Americas. This is the Laika lineage, pre-Inca, pre-Aztec, very old medicine. But they had this medicine wheel, and you see the medicine wheel in different lineages. And they all are similar, but have slightly different, depending on where they were on the planet. For example, like North America in the Lakota, their medicine wheel, you enter on the east. But for the Chiaro, you enter in the south. And slightly different, but really very similar. And it's mapping the mind. It's mapping your life, but it's more importantly, mapping the hero's journey. It's mapping that journey of the soul and helping us with the steps that we want to take along the way as we have these deaths of the psyche that are going to happen if you're growing at all. You're not the same person you were a year ago, right? Part of you has died off and a new part of you has been reborn and remembered. So that process is ascension, bringing us into a higher mind, a higher consciousness. The Chiaro believe we're in the time of the Pachacuti right now, and this means we're coming into a how did they put it? Homo luminous, which basically means we're coming into a higher consciousness, and we're more luminous beings. We're understanding that we are one, and not so much separation. But you're seeing it very black and white right now, and different lineages talk about it in different ways. But yes, the hero's journey is essential. So that's beautiful that you heard Joseph there. That's awesome. And so yeah, I'm teaching the South direction for one weekend in Boise at a yoga studio, and you can find all that information on my website. And and it's one weekend for the South, one weekend for the West, one weekend for the North, and one weekend for the East. And each weekend we'll do different shamanic practices. We'll incorporate yoga, and it's really common. I've been doing the classes online as well, and the IU that we have right now, the IU means community relations. This specific IU, wild to me, after people go through the West, how many people start dreaming about killing things, like death dreams. Because in the West, it's jaguar medicine, life-death force. So you are confronting the parts of you, the shadow sides. So it's a lot of shadow work in the West. And you're going into the darkness of yourself and cleaning out the closets. So people start emailing me at that point in the class, like, I dreamt about killing cats. What is going on? And it's like, it's okay. It's totally good, actually. It's part of your psyche that doesn't need to be there anymore, is dying off. You're exfoliating your brain, if you will.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm doing that run up in Boise, in great town. Great town. Have you spent much time there?
No, I've never been to Boise.
What? It's fantastic.
I've been to Big Sky, or there was a comedy festival years ago in Montana that I went to. I can't remember the city where you were.
Well, I'm really excited to be able to go back. The yoga studio's putting me up there.
Well, that's Montana, not Idaho. So yeah, I was totally wrong on that. Sorry.
Oh, Big Sky. Yeah, that sounds like a Montana thing.
That's a Montana thing, not Idaho, I think. So I'm sorry, what were you saying?
So I'm going to be in Boise, and it's a lovely place. So
oh, okay.
You should go.
But
yeah, if anybody's interested, sign up is happening now, and I'm excited. So
and you don't have to be in Boise to do it.
Well, no, you don't. You can do it online with me, but we're already halfway through the wheel now. We'll be going into the north in the fall on Zoom. But if you wanted to join our IU, I can send people the classes. All the classes have been recorded. But there is something really wonderful about being in a live class where everyone is experiencing the medicine at once. There's a real power in community, and we're really wanting to come back to that. That's something we're all really craving. We've really separated ourselves from the earth, from each other. I mean, my gosh, I drove into LA last night and I was just like, wow, this is different. I've been living in the mountains for years now, and it's very dry out there. I don't know if anybody aware, but I think something's happening. Anyways, I drove into LA. I got up this morning and there's all these green yards, and I'm like,
oh, it just rained here like 3 days ago.
Wow.
So we've got green yards for about another 2 days.
Okay. Wow, it's green. It is green here. There feels like there's moisture in the air. Very different from where I've been. Anyways, really dry. And lots of smoky summers these past. I don't know. I think something's going on. Yeah. But so in that time, the Chiaro's predictions, they predicted this 500 years ago of there was a time of the Pachacuti, that the earth was going to be rebalancing and it would look like a time of crisis. And here we are. And we are being asked to really get grounded and remember how to work with the land and be a part of this land instead of forgetting that she's our original mother. It's not hocus pocus. It's just fact. Your body is made of minerals, air, water. Oh, like the earth. Weird.
Yeah, it's once we realize, although there are people who will tell us that we were brought here, but
if so, we are still made of this medicine.
Yeah, and and the universe is all made of the same things. Mm-hmm. So we are derivative from that of which we are living.
Right. So it's sad how much we've separated ourselves. So these practices are really healing. These are self-healing practices. But then after we do that, then we're able to take that medicine to our relatives, to our friends, to our children, and share these practices with them and promote healing. And, that's the whole purpose of shamanism. It's to help clear ignorance and to promote healing, to bring healing. Help people to remember how to be self-sourcing, which is the practice of the Bodhisattva of Buddha, is how do I become self-referencing? I was raised Christian, and it was always, Buddhism was so taboo because it was thought they don't believe in God. And that's really actually not true. If you really study, you realize that they do believe in love and unconditional love and bliss and joy. And that, when I was dead, was God. So
that's the kind of God I can get behind.
Right? I agree. I agree. But when the ego comes in and tries to form these religions that are controlling and you're doing it right or wrong, and all this dogma becomes so just too much for the human spirit. And so these are soul practices. That's why after a session I'll give people soul work. It's not ego work. It's soul work. You're not turning it into me. I'm not going to grade it. No, this is for you. So I'm really excited to be sharing all these different practices now and mixing modalities. I'm always mixing things up, and it's been really, really beautiful to watch people coming out of these prisons that they've lived in their whole life when the door's always been open.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were describing, it's about the spirit, mm-hmm. right? I was imagining, or I was seeing the spirit as this beautiful like stallion, mm-hmm. right? And the brain, the materialist, like, this is what we need to do to mm-hmm. harness that thing, is what has built the stall mm-hmm. that's keeping this beautiful stallion from running the fields. But the gate's been wide open the whole time.
Yep.
And the stallion doesn't realize it, thinking that it's trapped and it has to be in here. And it has to, because that's where the food and the water is. Meanwhile, there's plenty of food and water out there. There
is enough. And you're right. And that's beautiful. You related it to the power animals of all power animals, horsepower. You see what I did there? Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Stop by Todd Walker Ford today for your F-150.
Horsepower. But this is our original wound. This is what we call the original wounding, that we are all kicked out of the garden, that there is scarcity. Being kicked out of the Garden of Eden threw humans into scarcity mode, thinking that there was not enough, that we are not worthy, that we have to go through something else to talk to God. There's this great story. I've really studied the past few years with Alberto Villaldo from the Four Winds and love his work. I've also studied with Michael Harner's school as, The Way of the Shaman. I see it's on your mm-hmm. bookshelf. But once I really dropped into being kicked out of the Garden of Eden and realizing that we're allowed to be here, We're actually being asked to be earth keepers, actually tend the earth and take care of it. It puts you in a different perspective. You know,
I'm ready to burn all this digital equipment and go start farming right now after talking to you for 40 minutes. I get it.
Yes, but that original wound has sent people into such fight or flight, which is what got us busy. Separating ourselves from the mother and forgetting that we're actually really welcome here. Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. You know, I think we all get there regardless of what lineage we're studying with or whoever we signed up with. I think we're all, if we really dig down to it, and that's why it's actually really been pleasant sitting among the Mormons in Utah this past year. I really didn't know how they'd receive me with my teepee, but they've all been really nice. And on Thanksgiving, I had a Mormon family, I had a Hare Krishna, and then Sam and I, we all went into the teepee and we read old letters from old Indian chiefs talking about how you can't sell the earth. And every family agreed. And every family met there around my fire. And there was no hierarchy. And there was no one saying that we weren't related in that moment. It was really beautiful. And I think that's where we just want to keep sinking into as we go forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that unconditional love and bliss. I mean, these things bring people together, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's ever been in a room with someone who was unconditionally ready to love them and thought, this person needs to get the hell out of here. I mean, unless there's something really that they're working through, right?
Well, yeah, and that's where going into the no mind, beginner's mind is so key, important, right? Because unconditional love is a lie. It's a total human illusion. If you want unconditional love, go get a dog. Seriously, because no matter what happens, once you start loving someone, you start having expectations of that love.
There's conditions.
And there becomes conditions. That's right. And our brains aren't built for it. And this is why we have to go into no mind. There's a great story of a couple Buddhists they're practicing, they're meditating, and they wake up out of their meditation and they looked at each other and they went, you know what? I love myself more than you. And the other one went, that's weird, me too. and that's okay. Like, being honest about it is okay. But we're even putting conditions on unconditional love when we think it's possible. Like, let yourself get over it. The truth is that until we can all drop in to realize our own unimportance, it's not attainable. You know, it's very rare. I feel that people that have really died and gone into that light, we have a channel to it that is slightly different. And maybe I'm wrong, but there are times that I have had some really interesting thoughts of, wow, even if I can just help one person relieve a little suffering, then if that meant I can die tomorrow, great. You got to get to that place of, I don't care if my actions can actually help, then you're going in the right direction. And that's why we're always talking about intention, right? What's your intention? If your intention is just about me, then I'm not coming from a heart-centered place. But if it's about we, now I can come into the big picture.
Well, will I be recognized as someone who's helped people? This is important.
And that's going to trip you up.
Right.
It's going to trip you up. I remember one of the first meditations that went really deep for me. I was 19. I was trying this different way of meditating, and I went into this other place. And as soon as I recognized, oh, I'm in another place, boom, I fell right out on my ass. I mean, it was really weird. It was like they kicked me out right away. They're like, oh, you still think you want to be you, huh? That's it? Oh, okay, bye-bye. I mean, and I was shut out. I didn't go back there for years, and this is the purpose of meditation, is to help us continue to shed these roles that build this construct of such caging. So forgive me, I don't know where we started in that. It's so easy.
Well, I'm not sure either, but
it's so easy to go down rabbit holes.
yeah, I remember I've only done it twice, the 24 hours of silence. And it is profound once you realize the thoughts that are cycling through your brain on repeat all the time about yourself.
And not true, right?
Correct.
Not true. If you watch, if we watch all those thoughts that go through our mind, they also have no through line. They don't relate to each other.
It's like, you're always going to be alone, or you're not going to make it past tomorrow. Yeah. It's like, so I'm going to be alone for a very short time? Is that what we're talking about?
No, and this is why we have to meditate. We have to have practices that help us master the mind, become masters of our own minds. And this is where the Karo say we are here to create gods, not monsters, but we could.
And we've done a very good job of that.
We've done an excellent job.
So we've excelled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, depends on what you want to create. But the practices that I'm specifically focused on teaching now are to help people step into co-creating with God, Great Spirit, what have you, Krishna, Tao, Ra, whoever you signed up with. It's not strict to any one lineage, which is also why I really love it. It's about soul work. It's not about ego work. And that discernment is where we first sit, the practices of non-judgment, non-suffering, looking for the beauty, looking for the medicine and the poison. That's where we first have to sit and look at it and step back and be objective. And how do I just watch it without being emotionally triggered? All those practices that help us really breathe easier and sleep better at night.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I'm excited.
It's really cool. Oh, and speaking of which, there's going to be a really interesting opportunity for people to do just that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, so many. I mean, my website's got all of it up right now. I actually don't think the UK is up on my website. Weird. So you probably all know Angela Lovell because she's worked with Ryan on Where the Magic Happens, which I'm sure you perhaps have maybe listened to. We are going to the UK. And Angela has an aunt and uncle with a great, beautiful inn/pub because it's the UK. You can't have an inn without a pub. Pretty sure.
I think that's the rules.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And it's so stunning, beautiful. I'm pretty sure it's 1,000 years old as I shake my head no. Actually, you know what? I don't know anything about this place. You want to go to We Travel? Angela will send us a link to post with this.
With the information.
Yeah.
Okay. In the show notes.
Yeah, in the show notes. Thank you. I was waiting for your lingo.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I thought you were sourcing some information from somewhere just now. Like
I'm opening a portal to Angela's brain right now to reach through it.
Let me pull out. Oh, don't want that. Put that back in there. So I'll make a link in the show notes for people. Yeah, for sure.
And that gives all the details as far as where they want to fly into. We're going to have people, carpooling from the airport in, and we've got shuttles we can send to. And
what are the dates on this?
Limited rooms, though. August 10th.
This is how often you go on promo tours.
Yes, exactly. I'm terrible at this.
It's going to be the second week of August.
Yes, thank you. Second week of August. And then it's a considerable amount of time, though.
Actually, it could be the third week of August if August 1st is on a Saturday. So we better not.
I know that the first one starts on the 10th. I know that much. And it's a considerable amount of time. It's like 4 days that we're doing some really deep, empowering work on the first retreat. We split it up into two. my intention around that was because if you are a psychic, if you are an intuitive, if you're trying to enhance your gifts or step into a place of clarity, it's really important to do your shadow work and your healing work. We need healers that are healed. Otherwise, we end up projecting our own pains on our clients, and that's not such great stuff. It can really cause a lot of chaos in our life instead of peace and harmony. So really important we have healers that are healed. So we designed it so that the first weekend together is all around empowerment, healing trauma, really looking at our own shadow work, doing some ancestral constellation work, beautiful, beautiful work, deep work, important work. And then the next weekend will be the psychic development work. And there we will, get to work with so many things. There's a lot of haunted space. I mean, this is old land we're going to. And there's been some children actually trapped in a part of this building. So I'm going to take everybody there and with Angela, and we're going to teach people how to help people cross to the other side. I'll probably be sharing the death rites as well, when someone passes, how to help their soul unlock from the physical body so that they can journey easier. It's going to be a lot of deep work again. And then we're actually going to have a day of a field trip and take people out to some beautiful gardens and land and work with some land spirits there. And then we're opening it up to the public to not only join in the work itself, but to come in and do a couple hours of readings with everyone. So you'll get to practice doing your own intuitive reading and psychic work with people. I'm really excited about it. It's something that I did early on in my training, and it's only 15, 20-minute readings, but it at least like helps you flex and figure out, how do I hold space for somebody like this? It's really exciting. So that will be really fun. And then, we'll do fire ceremony. They've got a fire pit and a garden at the inn and a lot of rituals. And I'm really excited to join forces with Angela. She's very gifted, and it will be a lot of work, but deep work that I think is really important. And I've seen dramatic shifts in my own clients' lives, so I'm excited to share it with people that perhaps I never would meet being in the UK. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so we'll do one weekend of healing and self-empowerment, and then the second weekend is psychic development. And you can do both weekends or a single weekend. You can also stay outside of the inn, but the inn, I think we are down to 10 rooms now, so we're only going to keep it open for another month. I think we close enrollment at the end of this month, because we also have prep time. Like, I'll give sessions as part of the retreat, and so will Angela pre the retreat. So when walking in, I already know, and you know that I already know what you're unpacking, so that we can really hold space for you in your own process. So you're not walking in cold. You're walking in and we are ready. We know what we're addressing.
You hit the ground running. Really.
Yeah. So to make the most of our time together, I'm really excited about it.
Well, that's a great idea. That's something unique that I've never really heard being done.
Yeah, I've never looked at any of retreats like this before, so I don't know what they do. But this is just what I was feeling was the most appropriate. And, when you're working with trauma, you really can't work with it head on. You got to walk around it. Otherwise, people really do start to fall asleep and they'll start yawning. Oftentimes I see gray, like a mist come around someone's head. And it's because the subconscious brain has programmed you to block that trauma from coming up and out because it will hurt you. So it's the ego mind trying to protect you from being hurt by that memory or by that visiting that emotion. And by unleashing that trapped emotion, I can't walk straight through the front door. We have to kind of go around the back and project it as if it was happening to someone else or this rock, which is what they'll be working with, a lot of stones. And it's beautiful work, but it does take time, and you really do have to trust the practitioner and feel safe in the space. So I feel that if we want people to feel safe, they need to meet us beforehand and have some time one-on-one, so that they also don't have to tell us any of what they're confronting. It's not necessary. They don't have to relive it. It's not about that. It's about sharing tools so that they can release these trapped emotions, like I did with you in your session, to help them have a clear path in front of them that's not of fear, but of opportunity.
Really beautiful stuff.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited.
Check the link in the show notes, for all the information about the UK retreat.
Yes, please.
It'll
But
be
there
well worth it.
there is a deadline on enrollment, so try and get in there before the end of April. Otherwise, we close enrollment so that we can really pay attention to folks.
Okay. Yeah. So you got a few weeks to get on that at
Yep.
the most.
Yep.
So yeah, Sarah, this has been great.
It's always good to be with you.
So
Ryan.
fun.
I'm so glad I got to see your hair again. It's so fun.
It's all whenever I shampoo and condition, it goes next level frizz.
Oh, it's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it's what's so great too about this interview is like I just realized this like I think a few minutes ago while you were talking. I was just like, oh yeah, when I'm hanging out with Sarah, sometimes I forget that I have a human body.
Yay! Good.
Well, I love you. You're
I
beautiful.
love you
This has been
too.
great. Make sure you check out soulrollinglove.com. At some point, you might even have that info linked on your website. Maybe.
Yeah, I should. I'm traveling, so I probably won't get it done
But
for
in the
another
meantime,
week.
we'll make sure that you have people listening will have the links
Yes,
and be able
please.
to find it. So this has been great. And then I guess there's really nothing else.
No, if you want to meet me in Boise, you can go up and have a weekend in Boise. True North Yoga is the name of the yoga studio there. And if you're looking to walk the medicine wheel and you want to catch up with our IU that will be starting up in the north in the fall, then email me and I'm happy to send you those classes so you can prep yourself to be ready, or we'll start again next year. Otherwise, just email me if you have questions about anything.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, my pleasure.